Welcome everybody into another edition of Warm Weather Fans. It is Brian Stone and Zeke Palermo, and today we are here to judge ourselves, who watches the Watchmen type thing. Went back and re-listened to our preseason episodes where we previewed all 14 teams in the Sun Belt Conference, and we're here to discuss what we got wrong, where we were right, and where we kind of maybe split the difference, and maybe there was a little bit more context needed, and things that I'll throw it out. Coastal Carolina, this quarterback position, I don't think I ever would have anticipated their third stringer coming in and winning 5 games. But apparently neither did Tim Beck, because otherwise he would have kept his job by putting Samari Collier in earlier in the season. But that's all neither here nor there. Zeke, how's it going, man?
It's good. We're recording this. We needed a little extra prep time for this one, so we're recording this on a Wednesday. And that's thrown my whole day for a loop because it's just we record on Sundays. And so I don't know. It's felt like a Sunday. It's also felt like a Monday today. And I know this is the most riveting conversation to always. It's like hearing about someone's gambling bad beats. It's like, awesome, man. This is so over the moon exciting. Thanks for sharing. Right. But that's where I'm at today. It's been funky.
So you did a full on like psycho move that I laughed at over text message when you told me you were listening to our episodes at 2x speed, and you listened to at one point 5 of them in one night, which is hilarious.
It was a lot.
I kind of had just, I was like scrolling through some of them, especially like the longer ones, and I generally just kind of went to the end to be like, where did we project this team? And then kind of went back and was like, hey, if I said they were higher or lower for some reason, why? And then I went back if we were like way off and kind of listened to why. But the ones we were right on, I was just kind of like, yeah, this sounds about right.
In retrospect, that was the better way to do it. As I think about how we're going to do this next year, I really wish I had done that, because a lot of the notes that I took, and again, they're not all going to make this episode, but a lot of them, and because it's not worth mentioning, is like, oh, we thought this SEC West third stringer last year was going to make a splash, and he ends up with 14 carries on the year. Or, we're really pumped about this offensive line transfer from, Notre Dame who just doesn't end up playing, or it doesn't materialize, or he gets hurt. So those are things that, flavored some of our predictions, some of our expectations, but the goal is here to take a little bit of a big picture. I think a really good example that we'll kind of get to is like Brad Jackson at Texas State, who had a stellar year this season. And we went into the episode, that preview episode, and said, Brad Jackson, he played last year. He's no Jordan McLeod, and that was kind of it, because that's all anyone knew about him. Like, technically we were wrong about this, but that's disinteresting. We're trying to keep these a little more big picture, high level things. Just for the sake of conversation.
And I have a couple of quotes that like I pulled out, like direct quotes from the episode. So from the previous episodes, like the previews we did. So let's jump into it here. So I want to start with the stuff that we got wrong, because frankly, I think that's what, if anybody here is listening, that's what they're here for, is listening to us eat crow. I'll start off with the obvious one. We were way off on Old Dominion, who ended up winning 9 games, went 9-3. Colton Joseph was Offensive Player of the Year, although I'm very sure in the preseason I said he was the second best quarterback in the Sun Belt, and that proved true. I may have misjudged, I guess, who the best quarterback is in the Sun Belt, because I thought Braxton, Joseph, and then I thought Barnett was kind of a third place guy. But I can tell you exactly why I thought that they weren't going to be as good as they were this year. It was because a lot of their guys either hadn't done a lot at the D1 FBS level, like a Devin Roche, who had ran for, I think, like 200 yards in 2024. So I was kind of like, he was efficient with his touches, but he didn't really play all that much. So it's kind of hard to project what happens when you increase the volume on somebody like that, because there's always a chance that that falls off and they're better used kind of in spurts than like an every down
Mhm.
guy. But I'll go ahead and say for the receivers, the receiving core, namely Trey Brown, Ja'Cory Thomas, who both came from Hutchinson Community College, which is a JUCO that they actually played at with Samari Collier, the Coastal quarterback. I was just wary to go ahead and go, oh, these guys played at JUCO. They're going to be good this year as the starting receivers for this football team. And historical precedence being that Ricky Ronnie had not really had a winning record at Old Dominion and since he took over basically in 2020. So right. I think it was just, I think the lesson I can kind of take from this is like when I sit down and I look at a team and I go, okay, this team has one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. I will be probably cutting them more slack. But then I know they had a better team even on paper than like Arkansas State did. But I mean, I made the joke on Twitter. It's like, then you get a guy like Jalen Raynor, who's like a Bugatti like parked in a trailer park. So you're just like, I don't know. I will be granting like the best quarterbacks in the conference more slack moving forward just because of how off we were on this.
Sure. I think we also really slept on the defense, and that means we got both sides of the ball wrong. But this goes to speak about the talent on that Old Dominion side and the coaching staff, really, because what stood out most to me is that a lot of their best players were guys that were here last year and didn't do a heck of a lot. Obviously, Jason Henderson medically retired very early in the season. I don't think he even played a game. He may have played 1-2 games.
I think he played one game.
It was like very early September where he says, "I'm done with football." And he had been, the linebacker for this team for a couple of years in a row. But Old Dominion comes out second most sacks in the conference, third best air defense, I think, by yardage. In the conference, and it's just because guys that were special teamers that finished the year with 10-12 tackles stepped up in their secondary, especially Jeremy Mack, Jerome Carter, Brandon Crutchfield, guys that were again primarily gunners, primarily like kickoff return guys. And so whether this is kind of the Butch Jones 8-5 year of last year where they're going to regress to the mean, especially post Colton Joseph, to be seen. But this season really reinvigorated or invigorated for the first time an interest in Ricky Ronnie and his coaching staff, because they turned a lot of guys that had not had production. You talked about Thomas, who it wasn't like he was a stud. By my research, had 23 catches last year in JUCO. Brown, 27. Naeem Abdul-Rahim Gladding had 2 catches at Old Dominion last year, right? So it's the ability to turn these guys into real playmakers that helped surround Colton Joseph and turn them into ultimately probably the second best team in the conference.
Yeah. I remember defensively, I gave them a lot of credit in the linebacking core, but then secondary wise, I was kind of the same deal as the receiving core, where I was like, again, not many of these guys played. You just said, how much production they had basically returned. So that was just a miscalculation on my part. And although I think we all kind of, even when Matt was on the show, like universally were like, I don't see it.
Although, we were all really down on them.
Yeah. I mean, I will say though, there is a little bit of middle ground, and I've said this before, because Old Dominion fans were hammering us in the preseason saying that they were going to win the East, and you see that didn't happen, and they lost 2 games in Marshall and JMU that basically put them out of the conference race pretty early in the season overall. I mean, they had a good season, no doubt. They made a bowl game. They won 9 games. They had the offensive player of the year at quarterback. This is not Old Dominion centric, but I am really interested to see if Barnett moves on. Of the guys that come back next year, it may be a really rough quarterback season for the conference next year, given who is still around. Maybe we don't know. There's still a lot of movement that needs to happen, like in the portal and all that kind of stuff. But it might be a really like not a banner year at the quarterback spot for a lot of these teams.
Early signs are pretty grim, especially because as you look around the conference this year, most of the starting quarterbacks were not plug-and-play transfer guys. Obviously, there were a lot of injuries, especially down at Louisiana, where they had the banner guy in Walker Howard transferring in from LSU. But from a conference-wide perspective, it was a lot of guys that had been in the system, second, third-year guys with the program, and not necessarily first-year transfer acquisitions like we saw with a lot of running backs, a lot of wide receivers in the conference this year were SEC Big Ten rejects, mostly from the SEC, and that's just, geographically. You talked about James Madison. I think, honestly, more than Old Dominion, I think we got them wrong as well because we were incredibly, incredibly lukewarm on James Madison. The three of us said, hear me out. The three of us said that they were probably going to win the East. Granted, when we recorded the preview, we thought that Alonzo Barnett was still like 2 months away from playing. But I think even with Barnett's health, we were like, yeah, they're the best team in the conference by matter of no one else being there. This is a good James Madison team. But this team was just an absolute buzzsaw. Ran through everyone. Defensive coordinator, absolutely legit. This defense, we talk about the Troy defense from a couple years ago and John Summerall's last year. James Madison surpasses them. Just by magnitude of what James Madison did this year, they're my biggest miss personally, because even though we were high on them, they were doing what I said Texas State was going to do 2 years ago. And we know how that went.
Well, again, I think for me, a lot of it was Barnett's health. Mm-hmm. I didn't love the outlook, and he looked shaky kind of early in the season, and rightfully so. He had tore his ACL. No, but he didn't seem to have his lateral quickness, like running the ball, especially until about the Old Dominion game, I would say, or somewhere thereabouts. I was just weary of a guy coming off of a torn ACL, rushing himself back, afraid that he would not be healthy or look himself. And again, he didn't really early in the season. Like, he had some rough outings, and he even had some rough outings when he was like 100%, like later in the season. So that was the biggest sticking point for me. Like, I thought that I took the over, I bet the over, which hit for the win total. I thought they were going to win the East. They did. Yes, like, if we didn't go far enough by saying they were going to make the college football playoff, like, sorry. Like,
fair enough. No, that's fair.
You mentioned this. I think my sole biggest miss other than Old Dominion is Louisiana.
Oh, yeah.
I think we all universally were like, Desormeaux is going to figure it out after losing Wooldridge and Carter, the tight end, and Chandler Fields, and like all of these guys they lost attrition via like the transfer portal or graduation. We all took the win total over, which was like 7.5 coming into the season. It was pretty apparent right away that they were going to be in trouble. The first game of the season, they lose to Rice like 14-12 or something like that. Walker Howard looks bad in the bit he plays. Then he gets hurt and is out for extended periods. And I think I'm not counting this as like a hit or whatever, but we even jokingly said, like, God forbid you have to play Daniel Beal this season. And Matt was like, cool out on my boy Daniel Beal. He was maybe the worst quarterback in the conference, save for like Tad Hudson. So we at least made that joke, and guess what? Late in week 1, week 2, until probably midway through the season, Daniel Beal was playing, and it was ugly and tough to watch. The offensive line was terrible all season. They couldn't block for running backs. They couldn't block for the pass. Lunch Winfield, who eventually stepped in and was about the only kind of sign of hope that they had. That was a huge whiff, like, for me, because I was like, I think this team's going to win the West and be right up there with, quote unquote, Texas State was the other betting favorite, along with Louisiana in the West. And another team, if we're doing who Vegas missed on, but not really us. South Alabama's over under was 7.5. Like, what were they smoking coming into this season?
Yeah, the South Alabama stuff. That was just kind of a. We got that one right, actually, and we're stepping on the toes of the next section. The over under was 7.5. We consensus said no way. Mm-hmm. They defensively they offered nothing on the front seven. That was really what stood out to me this year. And then looking back at the numbers, from a per play or per passing play basis, South Alabama had one of the highest yards per carry, yards per catch in the country. And that's just because they were getting no help up front. And that's not to speak about the offensive inconsistencies. Bishop Davenport was like,
well, hold on.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Let's stay on Louisiana while we're in this section. Yeah. We can talk about South Alabama in a minute. Do you have anything else to kind of add on Louisiana? I mean, it was just a total miss on our part.
Right.
And I don't know.
I think the outlook of this season is a little different if they go Lunch Winfield week 1. I think this is an 8-4 team with Lunch Winfield because they would have won the game against Rice and then Eastern Michigan in the very, very beginning of the year. So
yeah.
Obviously, we didn't predict the offensive line team. That was very, very crippling. You had a fun quote, though, I wanted to bring up, talking about Walker Howard and Daniel Beal. God forbid someone lands on his collarbone and you're starting a guy named Lunch.
That is a good one. Oh, man. Talking about Walker Howard's collarbone or Daniel Beal's collarbone?
Again, I was going at 2 times speed.
So I sounded like a chipmunk. Probably.
No, that was about Daniel Beal, talking about the prospects of like if Walker Howard didn't pan out or in the case of what actually happened, got injured. It's like, all right, well, now you're at Daniel Beal, who at the time we were very low on, still very low on. And it's like, dude, if Daniel Beal gets hurt, you got to play a guy that's on the depth chart lower than Daniel Beal. I mean, I ended up working out, ended up kind of salvaging something from this Louisiana season. Possibly kept DeSormo off the hot seat going into the offseason, frankly. But yeah, quarterback play was the biggest thing. And I don't know, maybe it's different with Walker Howard. That's why I'm willing to give him a pass to some degree.
Can I say one thing too?
Please.
Is we have numerous examples now, Lunch Winfield being the latest, Samari Collier. When people, I hate when people do this. I hate when people say you're not allowed to have a take unless you're like an active player. The reason I've always pushed back on that, and like I was commenting something on the Georgia Southern forum the other day, and someone said that, and I'm like, do you know how many examples we have over the past 2 years of coaches putting the wrong quarterback in for long stretches of the season and then just finally being like, my hand was forced, I had to put this other guy in, and he's a success? What is that? You can say whatever, like, hey, we're not at practice every day, we're not like in the film room with them. Great. Those guys are, and they still pick the wrong guy. So that's why I always push back on that, because I'm like, I don't care what they look like in practice. I care what they look like on game day. If you are a star in practice and you show up on game day and you can't complete 50% of your passes, I don't care how good you are in the film room. I don't care what kind of, practice player you are. Like, sometimes there are guys that look worse in practice and then look good on game day. And like, again, Lunch, Braylon Braxton last year, Colton Joseph last year. I mean, there's just numerous examples of like coaches that just picked the wrong guy and stuck with them, like almost out of a sense of like hard-headedness. And this is why I always push back on the whole, like, well, you didn't play college football, so you're not allowed to have an opinion on college football. It's like, okay, but these guys coach college football and they still pick the wrong guy. So like, what do you say then?
Yeah. Shifting over, another team we also kind of like James Madison, where we were generally right. Like if you were to, James Madison was the best team in the conference. That's what we anticipated. So we were right. We were wrong to the degree at which, kind of the flip side of that is Georgia State. where
we weren't even low enough.
we were not even close to low enough. We talked about how it takes a little while for a coach like Del McGee, who is heralded as a all American recruiter, a guy who's going to bring talent into the into the stadium. We were conscious of that and realized last year was pretty bad. This year will probably be a little rough and tumble, but once guys get in the system, once we're in year 3, year 4. Allegedly, what we've been sold is that this is going to be a program with talent. Right. We neglected the fact that Del McGee is incapable of winning football games,
and hired Hugh Jackson, who's a noted loser.
Well, we got that part right. We knew Hugh Jackson wasn't going to do it. Right. This was, and this is kind of a trend. I liked a lot of the remnants. Louisiana was another team where it's like, I like the remnants of what was previously here. Going into the first year of Jared Parker at Troy, which was last season, not this current season, I was like, I think there's good infrastructure here that might be able to sustain this team. And, obviously Troy is now back up there, but last season took a step back. I thought there was enough offensive line infrastructure to keep Georgia State afloat. I thought there was enough talent defensively to keep them afloat. And that just simply wasn't the case. I said in that episode, quote, I'm willing to trust the process. I am no longer willing to trust the process.
You're off the wagon then, huh?
Yeah. Again, jumping on the section earlier, I called out Cameron Brown. I said, hey, Cameron Brown's interesting to me. And he ended up, beating the very low floor, very low bar of Christian Valaire and PJ Hatter, who ended up not even playing, and TJ Finley. But anyway, that's where we were at.
I wrote down that we said 4. We saw 4 wins on the schedule. They didn't even get to 2.
They didn't win an FBS game.
Right. They didn't beat an FBS team. This was funny. One thing that I wrote down that I pointed out was I was very dubious of the Valaire Hugh Jackson combination. I was like, this to me does not scream set up for success. And again, we were wrong on the over under or whatnot, the eventual win total, but the elements were there. We just weren't like, how mad would people have been though if we'd have been like, they're gonna win like 1 game this year and they're not gonna beat a FBS team? People would have been like, get the hell out of here, you don't know anything about football.
I think that's why, especially from some of the voices in the Georgia State space that usually are going to go to bat for this team, you're starting to see a lot of folks that are very homer for this team are really showing cracks. And it's because this was not supposed to be what happened. This was not what was, it's just unacceptable for any team to not win an FBS game, let alone a team that, again, is like really trying to sell this bill of goods when, maybe we just needed to trade places with Kennesaw State, who's just won a conference championship, or, maybe they want to join the Sun Belt and we'll join Conference USA. Staying in Georgia, another thing I got wrong. I said J.C. French was maybe the 3rd best quarterback in the conference.
I think I pushed back on that too, didn't I?
You did, because you had Walker Howard, which is not necessarily untrue. No. We just have no idea.
No, I'm willing to say that I was wrong on that. I'm willing to say it should have been Alonzo Barnett was probably the 2nd or 3rd. It depends on how you feel about Braxton, but I was willing to. Sorry, guys, I was willing to give the offensive player of the year from last year or whatnot the benefit of the doubt. The big last one we missed on the misses section is definitely Troy.
Yes.
We said should win more than 4 to 5, but I think we settled on like 6 and 6. You said you had internal optimism about the program and like the way it was heading, so you were right there. We were overall wrong about them.
Yeah.
I was very dubious of Goose Crowder and Tucker Kilcrease, and I still, in my heart of hearts, feel like they played a pretty easy conference schedule. They weren't exactly going through the ringer every single week, and then they lose that Old Dominion game 33-0, and then they lose in the Sun Belt title game. Which, again, credit for getting to the Sun Belt title game. Nobody else in the West held it, but it was close for about the first half, and then JMU kind of ran away with it in the second half. And once Crowder got hurt, that game was essentially a wrap. But yeah, we were definitely wrong on Troy. I mean, but as we talked about with Barry McKnight, he was like, even around the fan base, like the expectations were 6-6 would be like healthy growth toward this, and for them to turn around and win 8 after doubling their win total from last year, that was huge for them. And I'm going to give Jared Parker credit, because I thought that maybe if he turned in another bad season that he would be on the hot seat heading into year 3. Even if they were 6-6, I'd be like, they're not going to tolerate 6-6 in year 2 for much longer than year 2.
I think when we look back at this Troy season, maybe when we start previewing next year, or over the next couple years, I think we're going to look back at this team as greater than the sum of its parts. Because there are a lot of games where Troy goes in and you look at the score, you look at the numbers, and again, they can only tell you so much, but you're like, how did they win this game? How did they come out on top of this one? Why can't Tay Meadows find a hole to save his life, right? Why does Tucker Kilcrease have the same average time to throw as incredibly mobile Lunch Winfield and Colton Joseph? Like, why are we doing these types of things, right? Yeah. Why is this offensive line allowing double as many sacks as the next worst team in the conference? And so this is a team that was ultimately greater than the sum of the parts. There were a lot of really good defensive players. Devin Lafayette, we knew was going to be good. Jordan Stringer, we knew was going to be good. Another community or JUCO guy that shocked us this year, Donnie Smith, comes in with 10 sacks. So the defense really, really came up big for them. There was a point that you made, and again, I'm not going to hold you to this. We don't have to call this a miss by any means, but you commented, Gerard Parker, talking about last year, it felt very conservative at times, talking about, maybe that's just first year coach, but sometimes those decisions need to be made. Don't take the field goal, go for it on fourth. And he turned it around in his second year as a head coach. Troy went for more fourth downs than any other team in the conference and kicked the third fewest field goals. And so, credit to him for making that adjustment, because again, when you can't run the ball, your quarterback game's shaky, and you have a defense, you got to take the points when you can get them. And that requires gutsy calls like that.
I agree. I mean, even going back to 24, I still just felt like he was too conservative. There were games where it was like Memphis last year really sticks out in my mind, where the game was over and they just settled for a field goal, I think, to make it 27-3. And I was just like, who does this benefit at the end of the day? Are you just trying to get your kicker some reps? Like, you cut a 27-point lead down to 24 with like not that much time to go in the game. Like, what does that accomplish at the end of the day? So yeah, no, credit to him. He turned this team around, definitely, because I don't really think anybody had them go into the Sun Belt title game representing the West. So he did a great job this year, and deserves some leeway in the future, which we will obviously grant him based on this season. All right. Were there any more that we were like wrong on before we jump? Because I know that there are people that are just going to click out after the we were wrong section because they don't want to hear us take like victory laps. But is there anything else we just totally, even if it's not team wide, just like specific points, I would say?
A quote that stuck out to me, I think from one of our first episodes, one of our very first previews of the year. And this kind of goes back to the James Madison. I don't know which one of us, I think it was I, that said there is no dominant team in this conference. And that was just simply untrue, as far from fact as it can get. No, I think there were a lot of surprises. There were a lot of middling teams, and this will transition into what we got right. There were a lot of middling teams that we kind of called out ahead of time and said, we don't really see it. I think the top one is obviously Arkansas State, which regressed to the mean heavily.
So easy. I mean, it was the most obvious regression candidate out of the entire conference. If you look at the defensive numbers from last year, and you looked at like point differential and stuff like that, you were like, there's no way that they can't keep this up where they have like a negative or almost even point differential, which would point you to saying this team's going to be like more of a 6-6 team. And then they win 8 and you're just like, that's just one of those things that doesn't hold up. Now, I will say one minor thing we were wrong about on Arkansas State, but it only developed later in the year was the pass rush, where I think we said, what was his name? Brian Whitehead or something was like their only real guy that was notable. I can't remember what the pass rusher's name that we pointed out was, but
Sure.
It was somebody that we were like, this guy's the only guy on the defense that's like even worth kind of mentioning. Outside of the pass rush, you saw it. I mean, they were a bad run defense. They were a bad pass defense. They lost Jaquez Cross early in the season. It kind of cratered the ceiling for what that offense could be, and they're right back to 6-6, and it's like back to reality, and it's gonna be rough. I still maintain it's gonna be really rough after Jalen Raynor leaves, because we saw the other quarterbacks that Butch Jones picked, like James Blackman, Logan Bonner, like all of these guys were just not it, and it's like he kind of uncovered a gem in Jalen Raynor that, frankly, like, what are the odds of that happening again? Probably not super high.
I mean, Butch Jones surely has some level of blackmail on Jalen Raynor to keep him here. I mean, that's truly the only reason he's stuck around for so long. Like he's had, they've done well to put some interesting pieces around him. Corey Rucker, obviously, but then Corey Rucker really regressed himself this year, was not great, disappeared for like the middle 8 weeks of the season, just did not show up to play football, which was really weird. Obviously, the Jaquez Cross injury puts a ceiling, because then you're left with like Devin Spencer. Was Kenyon Clay the second guy in that running game who's like, we said in the previews, anytime there was a Southern Miss transfer is, wow, the 2024 Golden Eagles are not really a team I wanted to load up on talent from. So that obviously put a ceiling on what Arkansas State did, but we were spot on. This team was going to come back down to earth, and this is really where they belong, in that 6-6, plus or minus one, kind of atmosphere.
Another team we got dead on, Texas State. I mentioned it on a previous episode. I went back. We didn't get a lot of heat on socials just because I don't think there are a lot of Texas State fans on social media, to be totally honest. Like, the amount that I've seen of them can probably be counted on like one hand or two hands. We got hammered though in the YouTube comments. People were saying, I can't wait to come back and watch this video after the season. You guys are just hating on us. You're just, you don't know what you're talking about. All the normal stuff, pushback. I will request this though. If you are a YouTube commenter or a social media person and you say, I can't wait to revisit this at the end of the season, you have to come back at the end of the season. And like, you can either victory lap or you need to eat crow, but you can't say something like, I can't wait to revisit this video at the end of the season, and then you're just in the wind and no one has seen you. Okay, we said they'd have one of the worst defenses in the conference. They allowed 30.6 points per game. They were 92nd in the country in total yardage allowed at 398. They started 0-5 in Sun Belt play before beating Southern Miss, which was their lone, I think, good Sun Belt win. ULM and South Alabama, not exactly the cream of the crop right there. We had them winning 5 to 6 games. Like you said, maybe we were a little off by not emphasizing Brad Jackson as much, but they were using him last year like a gadget QB, the way that like Southern uses Weston Bryan, or maybe JMU used Sluka early in the season. Like, so there was nothing to really go off of. He wasn't even the backup last year. It was RJ Martinez was the backup behind McLeod. And so I didn't see him play that much outside of like certain formations and sets. We said they win 5 to 6. They won 6. They did well out of conference, and then they got in conference and kind of crapped the bed for the first like 5 games. And then they beat Southern Miss with a backup quarterback, and then they beat the two of the 3 worst teams in the conference from there on. So I don't know what else to say.
See ya. It's been fun. I think Texas State, again, it depends on who they keep. I think for the first time, um, hindsight is 2020. We all know my Texas State 24 pick. But from a postseason perspective, like as soon as the season is over, I think Texas State is in the best situation they've been in the past several years. And obviously this is at the season's end, before transfer portal hit, before we know Jordan McLeod's coming over, before we know like what that situation was going to look like. Because again, I thought they were conference playoff or college football playoff bound. I think there's some interesting talent. I think GJ Kinney, I think there's a real ceiling on him as a coach. But when you look back like 3 years ago and it was Jake Spavital who refused I think Texas State is trending gradually. It's a very, very what's the opposite of steep? Gradual, I guess.
On an incline.
It's very, very soft, but they are trending upward. And for the first time after game 12, I think we can say that pretty confidently.
Well, they have to finally field like a real defense.
Yeah, I mean,
they haven't really done during GJ Kinney's tenure there yet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were okay in 2024, but it was one of those where it was like when they got beat like a drum. And when they played really well, they would hold a team to like 9 points. So you'd look at the averages at the end of the year and go, it's not that bad. But then when you go look at the individual games from 2024, you're like, I don't know, man. Like y'all got rocked by Georgia State like in 2024. Like what are we talking about? So that was one where people in the YouTube comments were like on us by being like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You're so wrong on this team. You guys are just hating because we're going to the Pac-12. No, you guys have a bad defense, and that has been proven. I mean, I don't know how, we said the offense should be good. I think we undersold the offense actually a little bit, but I think we also undersold how quite bad the defense was going to be, which was going to literally cost them games against Troy, who was it? Louisiana, I think Arkansas State, Marshall. I think those were all like losses that they lost in like overtime and shootouts. So until they can field a defense that is made up of warm bodies that actually make a difference, I mean, not that we ever have to cover them again, but I think that was my big reticence to give them credit, and now we see that was right to do so. Yeah. Another team we got crushed on socials and YouTube for not knowing ball was Marshall. Marshall fans said that they were going to pick up right where they left off after last year, after winning the conference in 2024. They basically said that the transition from Huff to Gibson was just going to be a wash, like it was all equal, all said and done. People said we were too low on Carlos Del Rio Wilson and the downgrade from Braylon Braxton to him. Turns out we weren't that low at all. We said that they would win 4 or 5 games. They won 5. They started a shaky quarterback in Carlos Del Rio Wilson every week for almost the whole season until they finally had to play Zion Turner, who looked better than him in spurts. But we didn't see enough of him to even know where either of these guys are going to be come next season or even the bowl game. We said this is going to be a true rebuild season. We saw it with Troy last season. We saw it with Louisiana 2 years ago, where you get this mass exodus with the coach of talent and you're starting kind of back at ground zero almost. And all the Marshall fans told us on social media and YouTube comments that we didn't know what we were talking about. And you didn't make a bowl game. You finished 5th in the Sun Belt East, which was not a great division to finish 5th in. It's not like it's the SEC East or whatever.
I think that was a relative layup. I don't think the masses, I think it was more of just the homers that were hammering us on that one. Because it was a bit of a layup. I think another team we got right, broadly speaking, it got right in very much downplaying was ULM. We said no Ahmad Hardy, no offense. We saw Aiden Armenta. And even though, he had the offseason, he had the year of progression, it's like we kind of knew from the 4th or
Mm-hmm.
5th week of Aiden Armenta last year what we were going to get out of him. And wouldn't you know, this team cannot throw the ball, did not have Ahmad Hardy who can, break the hearts of opposing defenses. And ultimately, we just got a little bit closer to, luckily now it can happen now that they have a real AD, the Bryant Vincent firing, and just kind of try to figure out where this team is going to get any semblance of identity offensively or defensively. Because they're just a team lost at sea. I mean, they're like, it feels almost more desperate than what Georgia State is, because with at least Georgia State, I don't know, we're like 2 years removed from a bowl game, right? And from ULM, you're 2 years removed from Bowden saving your program by winning 3 games in a year.
Right.
So that program needs just like a top to bottom shakeup. New AD hopefully can do that for them, but that's something we had spot on. It's just like, no, Ahmad, without a superhero back there, who's going to do it for you? Because it certainly wasn't going to be Armenta. Parker Smith wasn't that good. Braylon McReynolds was not great.
Zach Palmer-Smith was fine-ish at running back for them. All of their pass catchers, none of them make a difference, really. I don't. That could be a chicken or egg thing with Armenta. It could be that he can't get the ball to them. It could be that they're just not that good. I don't really know. But we said that they would win 4 games. They won 3. So we were relatively close. You talked about South Alabama earlier. I want to point them out as well. There's a direct quote that I listened to, or two quotes that I took away from our preview that I think really nailed down what this season was. The first quote was, I said, they either need to turn a corner or go into a ravine, because you need to find out what you have with Major Applewhite. They went into a ravine. They won, 4 games this season? And there was another quote, this has a bigger chance of going bad quickly than them winning 8+ games. That was from you. So you were right on. We were right on. You said that they win 5. I noted that their offense would regress without Gio Lopez. They finished 77th in the country in scoring offense at 26.5 points per game. Yeah, it was just a bad season. I'm shocked Applewhite still has a job. You have to imagine that year 3 is kind of the make or break season for him, but he's doing a reverse Jared Parker where, what did he win, 8 in his first season? And now he's won 4. So who knows what year 3 holds for him?
With South Alabama, what we kind of anticipated, especially post Gio Lopez, was that this is going to be a team that is in like the middle third to like a smidge below average at pretty much everything. Like you said, 77th nationally in points per game. That's, just below the midway point, right? And a lot of their on paper numbers, defensively, offensively, just kind of sit in that range. This is a team that, I know I just said that ULM is worse than Georgia State. There's a world where South Alabama is worse than ULM because they are equally without an identity. But they're stuck in that purgatory that Arkansas State's been in, that App State was in for a couple years near the end of the Sean Clark stuff, where it's like, we're going 6-6. We can't be mad.
I'd say it's even worse than that now, though. I mean, with the 4 wins.
Yeah. Again, it's such a, between 2 seasons, it's like, you went 2 games above 500, 2 games below. I don't know what to make of you. Right. But we were down on South Alabama pretty heavily, and rightfully so. Another team I want to hit quickly for their coaching stuff, Coastal Carolina. We said it was put up.
I have a direct quote from this one that I think will make you laugh. I don't know if you wrote this one down, but I don't have any
direct quotes, but I mean, we just said it was put up or shut up for Tim Beck. And something we were wrong about is all 3 of us, you, me, and Matt. I don't know if all of the people on that show, actually, I think it was just you and Matt on that one. I think I missed that. Both voiced concerns that I would have echoed, that 6-6 probably wasn't bad enough to get Tim Beck fired. And so this is something we got wrong. A round of applause to their AD for making that call. Cause I mean, that clearly wasn't going anywhere, and they had to make a difficult decision, and they did so. So hats off there.
Yeah. My exact quote, and Matt kind of agreed because we were talking about some previous coach doing this, but I said Coastal going 6-6 and bringing Tim Beck back for year 4 was their worst case scenario. Lucky for them, their AD had the guts to make that firing. Whereas a lot of other teams, I mean, look at South Alabama was 2 games worse than they were, and they were like, let's just keep Major Applewhite around another season. Georgia State won one game this year and didn't beat an FBS team. They were like, let's keep Dill McGee around one more year. So, so I'm like, credit to their AD for being like, you know what, let's go ahead and pull the plug on this now, and we can just start hiring and doing a rebuild. People in our comments once again of that preview said we were dead wrong and that we were, I don't know. They said we missed players, but I'm like, who did we miss? Like we named
Samari Collier is like the only one that when I listened back,
he was the third string quarterback. Like, sorry, like we didn't mention the third string quarterback who came from a JUCO. I said they'd win 4, but I also didn't think that I thought it was going to be Morris and Hudson all year, battling it out. And I thought both of them were below average to mid. Collier, I obviously didn't see Collier coming in and going 5-1 in his starts, and Hudson tanking the team and going 1-5. So I would argue that the process was correct, even if the ultimate win total was not. And then I said they'd allow 30 points per game on defense. They were 128th in the country in scoring defense at 33.9.
Well, at Tad Hudson fan 6160, be sure to let us know, because we know you're listening, and we know you got strong feelings on this one. So, Mr. Hudson, just give us a ring. Tell us why Samari Collier was the worst thing that happened to this program since, God knows what.
It was very funny that all of the other Coastal fans jumped on him and was like, "Hey, dude, you need to pipe down. We've heard enough." I guess we can count this as a win. I don't know. Did you go back? I didn't listen to the whole Georgia Southern preview because I'm basically piloted it because you guys just bounced questions off of me. I was one of the things you mentioned, I was very dubious of you saying JC French was going to be a top 3 quarterback in the conference. He's probably closer to 6, 7. I would put Brad Jackson above him. I'd put Jalen Rayner above him. I'd put obviously Braxton, Joseph, Barnett, Brad Jackson. I'm trying to think of who else that I would Rayner. I would put a Rayner. Yeah, I have quite a few I even liked more of what I saw from Samari Collier than I did really from. Sure. I mean, he won games for a defense that was allowing almost 34 points a game. I don't know. I was like, their defense is probably not going to be great. They fired their defensive coordinator an hour after the last game of the season. I think I said that they were another clear regression candidate. I was like, Clay can't help himself to stay above 500 for very long. It started out this season looking that they were going to be way even worse than that, and they actually had to claw to get back to 6-6. With some pretty embarrassing losses to JMU, Old Dominion, which I think I called both of those preseason. I was like, they're going to get crushed by both of these teams. Southern Miss was another loss that I kind of pointed out. I was just shocked they even clawed back to get to 6-6 because at certain points we thought that as a fan base they were going to be a 3-4 win team based on the way they were playing early.
Yeah, I think I remember, and I said this on the show, and I remember thinking that Georgia Southern was kind of postured to take a step forward. But obviously we now know that from a talent and coaching perspective, that simply wasn't the case. I think more of that falls on Clay Helton than any of the players or 100%. Any of the, obviously him and then administration as well. But like on paper, they lost a handful of defensive playmakers. They lost obviously Jalen White, who was like a stud, but you fill that really well with OJ Arnold. You get continuity. I think Clay Helton's offense, if he could just, for the love of God, find a quarterback who's worth, a nickel,
right?
That's an offense that can make quarterbacks look really, really good. They're like, even in the Kyle Van Treese, Davis Sprint, it was like some games, those guys were lighting it up. Granted, they were lighting it up with 3 interceptions, but they were, throwing for 350 a game, 400, like it was nothing. So, that team left a lot to be desired. And I think I know you're patting yourself on your back, and I think you had a more realistic view, just being closer and following them a lot more closely. Yeah. The outside perception was that they were postured to take a step forward and simply did not materialize.
I mean, I remember I pointed out a quote that was from Helton in the Sunbelt Media Day, where he was like, our guys missed the Sunbelt title game in 2024 by 1 game because, Marshall beat JMU in the finale and we've got a real chip on our shoulder. No, you didn't. You mailed in the first 5 games of the season. You sleptwalked through 2 losses on the West Coast to Fresno and USC. You came back and you beat Jacksonville State and who was the FCS team, Maine or something, at home. And those were not overly impressive. And then you went out and got absolutely hammered by Arkansas State, Southern Miss at home. Eventually you got beat by JMU, ODU. I mean, it was just great. You scrapped and clawed by beating a 5-win App team, a 5-win Marshall team to get back to 6-6. But it's like, if anybody in the athletic department had a brain in their head, they would look at the season and go, we need to do what Coastal did and just jettison him like Tim Beck. But they don't. So they've been giving him secret extensions every year so that they've financially hamstrung themselves to a place where they can't feasibly do that. Or they like to pretend they're cash poor. So I don't know. I mean, I can just smell the BS from Helton like a mile away. I don't believe a word that comes out of his mouth. And what you said about French is funny because there's somebody in the fan base who thinks that French is like the second coming of Christ, with his play. And I'm just like, what are you guys watching on Saturday? Are you watching the same games as me? And that every time that he has a good game, they'll be like, see, he's really good. And I'm like, I wrote this out the other day. So Clay Helton played quarterback in college at Houston, right? In the 90s. So in theory, you would think this guy can develop a quarterback, right? He was one. He knows what it takes to be great. In his 4 seasons, he has never had the Conference Player of the Year, the Offensive Player of the Year, or a quarterback make the first or second team All Sun Belt. I think that says a lot about you as a coach when you're supposed to be the quarterback development guy, or you're like, I'm the CEO and I can't hire coordinators. I'm bad at it. He's on his 2nd offensive coordinator, and now he's going to be on his 3rd defensive coordinator in 5 years. So I don't know. Yeah.
I got one here. We haven't talked a lot about App State because that was an episode where we just kind of fired questions at Aikman. Aikman hit a slam dunk, and we need to be sending all of our questions. He called out JJ Cole. He said he had been hearing great things out of camp, and was a guy that was not on our radar. Even when he said that, I think all of us kind of shrugged it off like, awesome, that's great. But then AJ Swan shows up for 2 weeks and then turns into a flop. JJ Cole, very, very impressive. Especially for a young guy. And Aikman hit a slam dunk with that. Aikman also had kind of an interesting trajectory, and we check in with him from time to time. He said that there was a lot of initial disappointment with that Dowell Loggins hire because the App thought that they were getting Neil Brown for a while. That felt like a done deal. Then they bring in a bunch of SEC transfers. That's supposed to be really, really hype. So excitement builds, and then it kind of falls back down again, which, if that hasn't been App State for the past several years, where it's up and down a roller coaster of, oh, we've got this playmaker that really excites us, except we can't win football games. Mm-hmm. Oh, we have this quarterback in like Ryan Berger who's actually kind of good, or Joey Aguilar. It's like, actually, we still can't win football games somehow. Obviously, this year was derailed a lot by Kanye Roberts. Tore his ACL in early August, and he was supposed to be like the guy, and then you're left with not a lot in the running back room.
Well, they played the wrong running back for a long stretch of time. Instead of playing Jakari Lewis, they played Dubinion for way too long.
Mm-hmm.
And he just totally tanked their running game. I'll say this was not, I specifically watched another episode. I didn't watch the app one at all because I didn't even know how much we really like gave opinions on them, because it was more of just a discussion. I kicked around the Tim Beck is secretly Dowell Loggins and vice versa take in the preseason, and I think it was Matt was just like, no, I don't think so. He was like, I think he's better coach than Tim Beck, and I'm like, they might be the same guy. Offensive coordinator out of the Carolinas from a P5 that can't hack it at the Sun Belt level.
I guess we'll find out. Give me 4 weeks of next year and I'll let you know, but early signs say yes.
Yeah. That was all the teams. We hit everybody. I don't know, we were high on JMU, but like you said, maybe we weren't high enough. But everybody universally or no, here's one more. We didn't even talk about this, actually. We missed one. Southern Miss. In the preseason, the over under win total was 4.5, which I said was ridiculous. I asked Phil Steele about it. He was more down on them than even I was, and I was just kind of like, Phil, look at the pieces, man. Like, what you got? They probably got the reigning offensive player of the year or whatever at quarterback playing. So we need to get like with the program and say like, they're going to be better than 4.5. He said that their cap was like third place in the West, behind Louisiana and Texas State, I think he said was the other team. But yeah, I pounded the over. You actually said that you had them at 7 wins this season, so you got it dead on.
Yeah, which in retrospect is kind of shocking to me when I listen back and realize that, because I remember being a lot lower on Southern Miss in the offseason than I guess I really was. I think we had the general makeup of the team pretty bang on, right? There's obviously this incredible Marshall green colored top layer that ultimately, probably in large part why they ended up with 7 wins this year. But there was still a lot of program building to be done underneath. And we saw that obviously when Braylon Braxton went down. We saw that defensively. Something we pointed to, like a guy that shocked me, but someone we got wrong there, Jamon Tapp. We were trying to kind of compare him to Mike Green, and obviously Mike Green was just, world-beatingly good on the defensive end. And we kind of drew some comparisons and said, maybe this defense doesn't work when you don't have a guy like Mike Green. Well, Jamon Tapp turned into that guy, ended the year with 7.5 sacks. So
I think he had 3 in one game against App, too, or 3 or 4.
He was, obviously, again, with the Mike Green year so close in the rear view, everything looked so minuscule, and it's like, okay, that's three in a game. I think Mike Green did that three games in a row.
Right.
So everything pales in comparison to him, but we were generally spot on in that this is a Southern Miss team with flaws. And unfortunately, with now, it looks like Blake Anderson's going to take the job. He's the leading candidate. As Charles Huff goes to Memphis, we're never going to see this Southern Miss team fully materialize. Even if Blake Anderson sees immediate success, let's say they win 7 games again next year, even win 8. We're never going to know what this Southern Miss team could have been, which is a kind of a disappointment considering the 1-year turnaround they had. That when you've got those guys at the top and you just need to fill in with the best FCS D2 JUCO guys to fill, your third wide receiver, your fifth defensive lineman type things like that. That's a great opportunity that, if I'm a Southern Miss fan, I'm pissed.
Yeah, I get the sentiment from them that they're not happy about having to hire their third coach in 3 years at this point. But that's kind of the business of college football, Ironically, Southern Miss hires Tulane hires former Southern Miss coach Will Hall.
That one kills me.
Tulane fans were pissed, and I don't doubt them for 1 second. I'd be so mad if my AD had hired Willie Fritz and John Summerall back to back, and then his third hire he rolled snake eyes and just went, Will Hall's good enough. I'm too lazy to keep looking. I would be hot if that was me.
That's bad. Something else while we're on Southern Miss, something I want to talk about because this has come up several times throughout the year. We glossed over Southern Miss's game against Jackson State when we went over their schedule.
Oh my God.
And surprisingly caught heat. Southern Miss ultimately wins that game 38-20. It was 38-11 with like 10 minutes left in the game. So our apologies, Jackson State fans, for glossing over y'all.
There was
you weren't playing Georgia State. You didn't have a chance.
Right. I reread the comment section. There was a whole fight over whether Jackson State won the actual FCS national championship in 2024. And people were like, no, it was the HBCU national championship. And they're like, we are national champions. And I'm like, I think South Dakota State or whoever would have something to say about that. But yeah, that was very funny when I was like, the last people I expected to show up in the Southern Miss comment section with Jackson State fans bombarding us with like, we will be competitive. And you were like, no, it's 38-11 in the fourth quarter. So
what are you going to do? It's all right.
Last thing, should we hit on the App State being announced as the representative for the Birmingham Bowl with Georgia Southern?
You hit it. I want you to kind of explain this to me because when we spoke on Sunday and like as soon as we hung up on our recording, App State announces that they're going to play Georgia Southern in the what bowl? Is it
Birmingham.
The Carriers? The Birmingham Bowl. I don't understand why this is such a bad thing.
I don't think it's a bad thing. They just played a month ago though.
Isn't that cool?
Is it like what I understand everybody's like rivalry. Like I kind of repeat what I say on the episode from Sunday. Who benefits from selecting App State other than just App State? I mean, and then to say like, well, nobody else wanted to play them. That's not true either because Temple came out with a statement that they were asked before App State was asked, and they said we literally did not have a chance to consult our like coaching staff and like athletic department before Birmingham turned to App State and was like, the game's yours. So I'm just like, it's not the fact that nobody wanted to play us. It was that they for some reason they were scrambling last minute to fill that bowl. Again, like I understand people from like outside the program being like, yeah, just let the rivalry game play again. But I'm like, neither of these teams are very good. And we're replaying a game from a month ago. And I'm just like, other than just wanting to see JJ Cole take some snaps, what I don't know. I'm bored, I guess, by it. It's like, yes, we have this rivalry with App, but it's not like basketball where you play your rival like 7 times a season and then you're just like, okay. Yeah. Or even the NFL, like we don't play every team twice. So I'm just kind of uninspired as a choice, I would say. That's how
reasonable.
I would characterize it.
I don't know. I guess with no dog in the fight, I have no real qualm. As I look at it's hard to find an example.
Would someone want us to watch? Would someone want to watch us play Marshall again? It would be the same thing, other than just saying like we're slapping a rivalry on it.
I think the rivalry is why it's at all interesting, right?
Right, but I mean, what I mean is like App State is not a good football team because they won 5 games. So I'm kind of like, you take any 5-win team out of the Sun Belt and put them against us, and it's like,
but it's
is
not like
anybody
this
super
is
thrilled?
Michigan getting the call to play Michigan State. This is two, same tier, kind of pretty bad. So it's not like we're getting another rendition of Michigan State where it's like, awesome, Michigan State's going to roll and, everyone's going to be out of the stadium by the third quarter. Like this is grounds for a entertaining football game with a little more meaning than most bowl games have.
I just think it would be even like, if you were going to do this, I would rather have picked a Sun Belt team that we didn't play this season and have us play them. If you were going to make it Sun Belt versus Sun Belt, I would rather see a matchup I haven't already seen, especially a month ago. It's not like, other than putting JJ Cole in, nothing has really changed for App. And they did that like kicking and screaming. They didn't even want to put him in.
Now you're getting into what happened in Division II with Delta State and Kentucky State. Did you hear about that story where they were like, Delta State and Kentucky State were supposed to play like an 11th game of the year. Because in D2 you only play 10. And both of them, the way D2 playoffs work is you're ranked in regions and the top teams from each region get into the playoffs. It's kind of a weird mess, but it's actually better than what we have in division in the FBS. Anyway, both of these teams are kind of fighting for playoff spot. Loser probably misses the playoffs. The conference that Kentucky State is in announces like at the last minute, well, doesn't announce, but says, hey guys, remember this press release we put on our website back like last February? Well, we're actually contractually obligated to send a team to like an unofficial bowl game against another conference's worst team. So they send Kentucky State down to play or hosted one of the teams I cover, Shorter, which hasn't been above 500 and I think in the past 12 years. Coincidentally, Kentucky State gets to add an extra win, ends up making the playoffs, and I believe Delta State ultimately misses out because of it.
I would just from Georgia Southern perspective, I would rather have seen us play like Texas State or somebody, and let App take Texas State spot, because we're both 6-6. It's not like they're a massive step up from where we're playing. I just don't really want to watch a game that I just watched, I think is my key. All right, Zeke. So as we roll into bowl season, we will be putting out, I think, our preview, I would say, for the first slate of bowl games. Maybe we record that on Sunday, put it out on our normal Tuesday show, and then maybe we don't do a Thursday one next week until the fall. We make it like weekly instead of bi-weekly, just because there's not enough games happening at a fast enough rate to make it worth it.
Yeah, I think obviously we got to do one next week because we obviously get the James Madison Oregon game. As much as we would love to give that the same attention we gave James Madison Troy for the conference championship, and as much as JMU Sports Network is doing a bang up job on Twitter, they're doing an excellent job making that game sound intriguing. We know what we expect. I think James Madison is going to give a better showing than most people anticipate. But we know the direction, the ultimate result of how that game is going to play out.
Yeah. So as always, you can email the show at warmweatherfans@gmail.com. You can follow us on X, TikTok at warmweatherfans. Zeke, let them know where they can find you on socials and we'll get out of here.
I'm on Twitter at Zeke Palermo, ZekePalermo.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We will be back next Tuesday to put out our previews for the coming week's bowl games. And then we will, like I said, move to more of a weekly thing as these bowl games come along and happen, just because there's frankly not a ton to talk about. But yeah, so this has been another edition of Warm Weather Fans.